Mysticism in the Confucian Tradition by Chen. The mystical experiences of Song, learning of the heart, xinxue. Mystical experiences in the Ming point the way to and provide a thread for understanding Song Confucianism. In the same way that Ming mystical experiences mostly came from the lineage of young Ming, Song experiences are most often seen in the scholarly lineage of Lu Jiuyuan, 1139 to 1193. When Lu Jiuyuan's follower Yang Jian, style Zihu, 1141 to 1226, would gaze back, fan guan, at the origin, he became aware of the unity of heaven, earth, and the myriad things. They are not outside of my heart. Lu Jiuyuan went to Fuyang, where there was a gathering in the evening at Shuangming Pavilion. At the gathering, Lu frequently used the words original heart, Ben Xin. Yang asked him, "What is this original heart?" Zhu Yuan replied. Hearing this, Yang suddenly felt an unadulterated clarity wash over his heart. He eagerly asked, "Is it this?" Lu responded sternly, "What else is there?" Yang excused himself and sat reverently until morning. When he would come to places of doubt in his reading, he would stay up all night unable to sleep. While sitting there stupidly, eager to understand, it was as if he suddenly peeled something off, and his heart thereby understood. Yang Jian's practice of silent meditation and gazing back, fan guan, allowed him to attain an experience of the unity of the universe and things. When he later heard Lu respond to his question, he was not immediately enlightened, but excused himself and sat reverently until morning, again employing the practice of silent meditation. This is how he attained an enlightened experience of this heart. For Yang Jian, his discipleship to Lu marks the shift from the extrovertive mystical experience of unity to the introvertive experience of clarity of the original heart. From the perspective of mystical experience, Yang Jian's changes of the self is not difficult to understand. Changes of the self has traditionally been considered a work of profound absurdity, filled with empty and ungraspable words. For instance, the changes is me and no other. It is not right to treat the changes as a book. The changes is me. It is not right to treat the changes as the transformations of heaven and earth. The changes is my own transformation. Viewed from the perspective of rational thought and common philosophical reflection, it is nearly impossible to fathom what epistemological basis there might be for such propositions. The reader can only sense a kind of absurd self-indulgence. However, Yang Jian's philosophy is founded upon the description of a mystical experience that views the process of infinite change in the universe as unified with the self. The content of this description is not the result of rational and logical thought, but is rather a certain type of psychological experience. Yang Jian writes, "I realized one day that this heart is without form. It is unadulterated clarity without horizon. It is originally the same as heaven and earth. There is no inside and outside of its domain, and it lives and nourishes with no borders. This realization, Jue, is enlightenment, Wu." At this time, Chen, Bai Shi, 1149 to 1223, criticized Lu Jiuyuan's scholarship, saying, "In the Zhe region, Lu's influence is great, and his followers Yang and Yuan, Xie, are venerated. Riding this fame and influence, they don't read, they don't investigate principles, preferring to spend all their time doing seated meditation." Chen Chun's assessment is not unfounded. Ye Shui Xin, 1150 to 1223, pointed out, when Lu came out and said that shortcuts could be taken, many men said that they were moved and enlightened. His followers sat in pristine meditation and gazed inwards. The latter refers to the basic practice of learning of the heart. Yang Jian's follower, Ye Youji, style Yuanji, focused his practice on Jue Si Ji. The Song Yuan Shui An describes his experience thus: "I picked up Yang Jian's Jue Si Ju and read it. I understood that this was a mind that was bright and vast, a mind different from the twisting and turning theories of former scholars. I read and put these things into practice, daring not to give rise to any other ideas." Qi Yi. "One night, I woke up to the sound of drums. My whole body was covered in sweat. Losing my voice, I let out a sound. This is not the sound of drums, but is the grand transformation of the original form. It was like there was a thing in front of my eyes. When Yang Jian arrived in Wu, Ye respectfully sought out his instruction. Upon hearing the teaching of Yang Jian, that thing vanished into thin air. One of Yang's poems says, "That sound you hear in the middle of the night is not a drum. All night long I listen to the calls of swans. Are these the same or different? It's hard to say. What thoughts? What concerns? All blend together. From a few pieces of coal in the furnace comes heat. A small window in the sky spits forth enlightenment. Get out of bed to see the endless sights. Along the banks light shines clear for 10,000 miles." Ye Youqi's experience of enlightenment through sound is similar to the Chan Koan about the monk Master Fu, who heard the sound of an army bugle, Jiao Sheng, and was suddenly enlightened. The light shines clear for 10,000 miles is precisely the realm to which Yang Jian's Zhu Xi points. Lu Jiuyuan's other famous disciple, Yuan Xie, style He Shu, 1144 to 1224, first met Lu in the capital. Lu described to him the penetrating understanding of the original heart. Yuan took up Lu's teachings and thought long and hard about them, but things did not fit together and Yuan was not confident in his grasp of the teachings. Then, one day, he had a profound and great awakening. He picked up a brush and wrote, "In searching for the way with the heart, there are countless differences and distinctions, but then I fully embodied my way. The way is not found in others." Yang Jian and Yuan were both students of Lu, so their understanding of the way is the same. Yuan realized the oneness of heart and way. The text does not say that his great awakening came from meditative experience, but it is also a kind of mystical experience similar to that of Yang Jian. Of Lu's students, Zhu Xi disliked Fu Mengchuan the most. One day, in the early years of Fu's study, he was reading the Gong Sun Chou chapter of Mencius when suddenly he found his heart in perfect resonance with the text, and there was a sense of openness in his breast. He would often say to people, "People stand between heaven and earth and are indestructible. If one is able to cultivate oneself in this way and expand the good beginnings of one's innate mind, liang xin, one can fill the whole universe and connect past and present." Fu lost his mind and died, a fact Zhu Xi believed to be related to the one-sidedness of his practice. In other words, Fu went off the deep end. Around the same time, another man, Shi Zongzhao, who subscribed to the teachings of Lu Zhu and Lu Zuqian, 1137 to 1181, wrote an epitaph upon the death of Lu, saying, "Bright learning and fiery rocks are insufficient for practice." Lu Jiuyuan was greatly angered by the comment. The comment likely refers to the experience of sudden enlightenment taught by Lu. Ye Shui Xin and Chen accused Lu for teaching only the practice of quiet meditation. In fact, Lu never made this the core of his teaching. However, he did teach people to meditate. Yu Lu includes a record made by Zhang Fumin. "I thought about this and gathered together my heart, but was only able to cast light on things." Jiao Wu. On another occasion, I was in attendance at the side of the teacher. I didn't make any inquiries, but Master Lu said it would be good if students closed their eyes more often. I thus would sit peacefully and shut my eyes when I had nothing else to do. I would focus on holding to myself, Cao Cun, day and night. This went on for half a month when, one day on the way out, I suddenly realized that this heart of mine had returned to being clear and bright. I stood there quietly stunned and then went to see the master. His gaze met me as I entered, and he said, "This principle has been revealed." I asked how he could tell. He said, "I saw it in your pupils." He then said to me, "The way is nearby, isn't it?" I said, "Yes, it is." This is sufficient proof that Lu did teach his students to meditate in order to attain an experience of unity between self and the way, and a realization of the clarity of the original mind. This is why, when Zhou Dehan had his experience of original truth, he said, "This is what Lu Jiuyuan called the disclosure of principle." Not only did Lu's students and the students of his students have this type of experience, even those who admired his teaching at a distance did as well. When Zhao Yansu, style Ziqin, 12th century, died, Yang Jian composed a xinxue for him. With the completion of the polymath examination, Hongboke, he went to study the books of former scholars, claiming that he understood them all. He was friends with Master Hui Yanshen, with whom he discussed the great ultimate, Taiji. When he was unable to experience Qi, he was so frustrated that he forgot to sleep and eat. He thus burned several boxes of things he had used for his previous studies and committed every moment to practice. One day, while on a boat in the Song River, he heard the morning call of a rooster followed by the barking of dogs. His body was covered in sweat, and the blockages in his breast from the day before were all gone within an instant. Later, he told this to his students, adding, "I don't know where this sweat came from." On the occasion of his initial awakening, he wrote this poem. Keep to the environs of things. All is familiar scenery. But by drowning in the midst of things, one cannot grasp the crux. Empty the heart and block out 100 thoughts. Still, there are layers of dust blocking the way. At the cloud's edge, flitting wings can be spied. At the bottom of the water, dancing scales can be seen. Checkmate the old man from Lu, Confucius. Laughter brings down the man standing above the how, Zhuangzi. Zhao's experience of enlightenment, hearing various sounds, body covered in sweat, is very close to that of Ye Youji. The method is to focus one's attention on the inner heart for an extended period of time. Then, with the aid of some kind of occurrence, one attains a profound experience. Chen Kui, style, Shu Xiang, 1139 to 1194, a man respected by Zhu Xi, was similar to Lu in his approach to study. Ye Shui Xin wrote an epitaph for him which said, "He was friends with Wei Yi Ji. He hated that his old mind was muddy and couldn't be made clear. His memory was frustrating and unreliable. Wei taught him to get rid of all the things in his heart and stand alone at the origin of things. It wasn't long before he had a sudden great enlightenment. It was as if everything appeared to him." The description of this experience is not very detailed and is therefore difficult to analyze further. Lu's teachings put a premium on simplicity and elegance and taught one to venerate virtue and nature, Zun De Xing, in order to reveal the original heart. This teaching is not without profound insights. When he says that he was able to fully attain the teachings of Mencius, these are also not empty words. Yet there are often places of confusion in the path of study laid out by the Lu school. How does one go about revealing the original heart? Students often were anxious about not knowing how to proceed. If we look at the record of Zhang Fumin's meditative practice, we know that Lu Jiuyuan affirmed this kind of experiential practice. This has to do with the fact that Lu himself also initially had this kind of experience, even though it does not form the basis of his later teaching. In this regard, he is more or less the same as Yang Ming. At the age of 3 or 4, Lu asked about the bounds of heaven and earth. He thought hard about this for many years until a great enlightenment occurred at the age of 14. Lu's Nianpu records, from the age of 3 or 4, he inquired into the bounds of heaven and earth, but was unable to get an answer. When he stopped eating on account of the anxiety, his father scolded him. He set the problem aside. But the question always remained in his breast. Later, as a teenager, he was reading old books and came across the characters for universe, Yu Zhou. The commentary said the 4 directions and both above and below are called Yu. The past and the present are called Zhou. He suddenly awoke and said, "So it is without bounds." He picked up his brush and wrote, "The things in the universe are the things within my allotment. The things within my allotment are the things in the universe." He also wrote, "The universe is my heart. My heart is the universe." He also wrote, "The universe does not limit and divide people. People limit and divide the universe themselves." Lu's mystical experience is one of unity between heart and universe that transcends the bounds of space and time. Scholars of Neo-Confucianism often seek rational explanations of phrases like, "My heart is the universe." It is not that these phrases cannot be understood in such a way, but when seen in the light of the tradition of mystical experience running from Lu Jiuyuan to Wang Yangming, we should seek an explanation outside of rationality and explain it in the terms of that tradition. In this way, we can better understand how a teenager can come up with these stunning phrases. Later, when Lu and Shu Ziyi had an examination, they discussed the phrase, "Men are the most venerated in the nature of heaven and earth," Tiyan Di, Ji Xing, Ren Wei Gui. Lu said of their conversation, "Ziyi said everything that I wanted to say, but he had never had the experience I had." Here, Lu is referring to the fact that he actually had an experience of enlightenment. Yang Zhan's phrase, "Heaven and earth are my heaven and earth, transformations are my transformations," is in the tradition of Lu's teaching, "The universe is my heart is the universe." The role of mystical experience within the tradition of Song, Zhu Confucianism is of great experience for our understanding of Song Neo-Confucianism. Zhu Xi's most important early teacher was Li Yanping, 1093 to 1163, who studied with Luo Zongyan, 1072 to 1135. Luo Zongyan studied with Yang Shi, style Guishan, 1053 to 1135, follower of the two Cheng brothers. The lineage of Yang Shi, Luo Zongyan, Li Yanping, and finally Zhu Xi is referred to as the Southern School, Daonan Shui Pai. However, if we focus exclusively on the intellectual lineage, we are unable to understand the features of the Southern School and the major changes brought about by Zhu Xi. From Yang Shi to Li Yanping, the Southern School greatly elevated the position of the Zhongyong's moral philosophy, with special emphasis on the theory of before and after stirring, Wei Fa Yi Fa. The Zhongyong says equilibrium, zhong, refers to happiness, anger, sadness, and pleasure before they are stirred, Wei Fa. When they are stirred and accord with measure, jie, this is called harmony, he. Equilibrium is the great root, ben, of the world. Harmony is the universal way. Yang Shi underscores this point. Students should embody with their hearts the realm before happiness, anger, sadness, and pleasure are stirred. In this way, the meaning of equilibrium, zhong, will naturally appear. This statement moves the Zhongyong statement on moral philosophy into the realm of experiential practice. Experience before stirring, tiyan wei fa, became the fundamental tenet of Yang's teaching. This is especially remarkable in the development that occurred between Luo Zongyan and Li Yanping. Zhu Xi writes, "When Master Yang first taught in the southeast, many men came to study with him. However, in terms of immersion in thinking and commitment to practice, there was only Luo Zongyan. Li Yanping heard that a man from his prefecture, Luo Zongyan, had received the teachings of the Cheng brothers at the foot of Yang, so he went to study with him. He received the most profound of all that was transmitted. This shows that the line from Yang to Luo to Li is the orthodox transmission of the Southern School. Luo Zongyan and Li Yanping spent their lives at work trying to experience before stirring. Li once wrote to Zhu Xi, "I used to study under Master Luo. All day long we would sit silently, xinxue, face to face, only talking about texts, wenzi, and never a miscellaneous word. Master enjoyed sitting silently very much. Sometimes, without my knowing it, he would retreat to a room to do nothing but sit in quiet. Master asked us to see the equilibrium before the stirring of happiness, anger, sadness, and pleasure from within quietude. What is the image, qi xiang, of the time before stirring?" Zhu Xi also records, "When he wasn't lecturing, Master Li would sit sternly, wei zuo, all day long in order to verify, yan, the image of happiness, anger, sadness, and pleasure before they were stirred, searching for what is called equilibrium. After doing this for a long time, he came to understand that the great root of the world truly resides in this place." Li also taught this to Zhu Xi. Zhu Xi wrote, "Master Li taught people to experience, tiren, from within quietude, the image of the great root before stirring. Thus, in handling affairs and engaging with things, one might naturally accord with the measure. This is the teaching passed down from Yang Shi." Experiencing before stirring is the fundamental teaching of the Southern School. The practice of Luo and Li is entirely focused on silent meditation, which, when practiced for a long period of time, allows for the attainment of an experience that the great root of the world truly resides in this place. The experience of before stirring, like the other mystical experiences discussed above, requires the subject to transcend all thought and emotion, quieting thought and emotion to the highest extent possible and transforming the activities of the individual consciousness into a state of pure intuition, xinxue. In the cultivation of this supreme silence, attention is focused on the inner heart, and the subject seeks to feel the pure state of spirit without reflection, emotion, desire, and thought. The successful practitioner will often suddenly attain a feeling of being united with the outside world, or the clear expression of pure consciousness. Thus, the basic teaching of the Southern School is intuitionism, and includes mysticism. Of course, the establishment of this kind of mysticism within Confucianism is a result of the influence of Chan and Taoism. Many Neo-Confucians naturally picked up on this kind of psychological experience in their study of Chan cultivation or Taoist longevity practices. However, the difference between Confucianism and the other two schools is the attempt to make inner experience into a means of raising one's level of character and cultivating one's heart and nature. In his youth, Zhu Xi practiced with Chan master Dao Qian of the Kaishan Temple and became very familiar with the Chan practice of experiencing the inside, Li Mian Ti Ren. After writing about Li teaching him to search out the before stirring, he immediately asked, "This practice is very similar to that of Chan, separated only by a fine line. But this fine line really takes up a lot of space." The meditative experiences of Luo Zongyan and Li Yanping and their constant search for a sensation of the great root derive from Yang Shi. Not only did Yang advocate the experience of before stirring, his understanding of investigating things, Ge Wu, was deeply influenced by this interest and experience. Yang wrote, "One cannot exhaustively know things. By reflecting on the self, there is integrity, fan shen cheng, from the Mengzi, and all the things of the world are shown to be in me." Later, Zhu Xi would frequently criticize Yang Shi on this point. Yang Shi has said that by reflecting on the self and thereby having integrity, the principles of all things are within me. But you must go out and understand the principles of all things. What would we come to if you could, by reflecting on the self and having integrity, naturally have the principles of all things within oneself? Zhu Xi always speaks from the perspective of rationalism, and therefore did not realize that the practice Yang Shi is referring to is, like Yang Shi's other method of experiencing before stirring, grounded in a mystical experience. Yang Shi's theory of experiencing all things within me has its origins in the teachings of the older Cheng brother, Cheng Hao. Cheng Hao wrote, "Humaneness, Ren, is the blending of things into one form. By preserving, Zun, the heart, for a long time, things become clear spontaneously. Why would I need to exhaustively search to understand principle? The way and things are not opposed. The word great is insufficient to clarify its meaning. The function of heaven and earth is my function, Yong. Mencius said that all things are in me. I only need to reflect on the self so that there is integrity. This is great pleasure, Da Le." From this we can see that Cheng Hao's notion of the unity of things is not merely a rational view. It includes elements of mystical experience. Since this experience involves the union of the individual with the universe and the myriad things, the concomitant great pleasure is a natural component of the experience. The attainment of this experience is different from Zhu Xi's theory of investigating things one at a time. By preserving for a long time, things become clear spontaneously. Why would I need to exhaustively search? While Cheng Hao does not explain the meaning of preserving, Zun, in great detail, it refers to the use of integrity and reverence in the preservation of the heart. It goes without saying that it also includes the practice of silent meditation, consistently advocated by Cheng. Hence, when Ming Confucians experienced enlightenment, they always referred to the notion of a single form uniting all things. Huang Zongxi wrote that Gao Panlong's experience was close to that of Yang Shi's reflecting on the self and having integrity. The connection between these things was no secret to Neo-Confucians. Song Yuan Shui An records, Cheng Hao liked Yang Shi. Cheng Yi liked Shang Tsai. Zhu Xi is third in the lineage going back to Yang Shi, yet his scholarship is closest to Cheng Yi. Therefore, it seems reasonable to think that Yang Shi transmitted the teachings of Cheng Yi to Zhu Xi. However, I have often been perplexed by this situation. Why, then, was Yang Shi so well liked by Cheng Hao? In his search for a psychological experience of before stirring, Yang Shi shows that he transmitted the teachings of Cheng Hao. Thus, when Yang Shi left Cheng Hao to return home, the latter waxed poetic, saying, "My way now goes to the south." When Zhu Xi was studying with Li Yanping, Li strongly encouraged Zhu to make progress in his experience of before stirring. However, in the words of Zhu Xi, early on I studied the Zhongyong under Master Li, who taught to search for happiness, anger, sadness, and joy before they are stirred. The master passed away before I understood. In the past, I heard my teacher encourage us to set our hearts to silently understanding the subtle point that divides the before and after stirring. While I heard this teaching, I was unable to figure out what it referred to. I heard Master Li talk about this in great detail. At the time, I didn't understand, and later I didn't think deeply about it. Regardless of whether or to what degree, Zhu Xi's unshakable commitment to chapter and verse style, Zhangzhu reading prevented him from focusing on this kind of experience, it is clear that he never had such an experience, even though he made efforts before the death of Li Yanping. Precisely because of his inability to find a usable experience, he continued on his search, which produced two different insights into equilibrium and harmony, the first in 1166 and the second in 1169. This search led him to a different path. He no longer sought out the meaning of before and after stirring in psychology, but rather in philosophy, thus giving rise to his entire theoretical system of heart, nature, emotion. Practice was no longer about the attainment of a mystical experience. The practice of reflecting on before stirring was employed as a way of retrieving and restraining, shoulian, heart and body, in the cultivation of the subject. Zhu Xi's cultivation for the advancement of study, hanyang, xinxue, and emphasizing reverence for the attainment of knowledge, zhu Xi, show that he has departed from the original trajectory of the Southern School and turned onto the path of Chengyi's rationalism. Neo-Confucian criticisms of mysticism. As seen above, there are more than a few descriptions of mystical experiences in Song and Ming Neo-Confucianism. However, those who consider mystical experience fundamental to practice belong to the learning of the heart tradition. Song and Ming followers of Zhu Xi have consistently criticized the mystical tendencies of learning of the heart from the perspective of their own rationalist views and their rigorous, self-restraint-based cultivation practices. Zhu Xi studied Chen and is therefore quite familiar with mystical experiences. He criticized Lu Jiuyuan's teachings for being too similar to those of Chen. When Chen masters talk about dried shit stick or other things, there is no other higher meaning, and one can't use it to think about ethical principles. The heart is completely forbidden in the hope that after a long, long time there will be some sudden and spontaneous excitement coming from clarity, Ming Kuai Chu. Today, Lu's scholarship is completely Chen. He also wrote, "It's like the followers of Lu Jiuyuan. When you see them for the first time, they're always talking about their enlightenment, but then when you look at how they act, they're all 6s and 7s. It seems that what is called profound enlightenment means that there was some insight at the time, and a feeling of purity and a passing excitement, kuai. But after a while it gradually diminishes. How could one depend on this?" Zhu Xi does not refute the reality of the experience. He questions its dependability as a way of enhancing virtue. The belief that the original heart is present after the attainment of some type of experience, and that all thought is henceforth the product of that original heart, is precisely the source of absurdity and confusion among Lu's students. Luo Qinshun, 1465 to 1547, who Rong Zhaozu, 1897 to 1994, spoke of in terms of the lingering power of Zhu scholarship, Zhu Shui Hou Jin, in the early Ming, describes his early study of Buddhist classics. When I was serving as an official in the capital, I came across an old monk and casually asked him how it is that one might become a Buddha. He nonchalantly responded with a Chan phrase, Chan Yu, "Buddha is the cypress in the courtyard." I figured that this must have some meaning and focused my thoughts on it until morning. As I shifted my clothing and started to get up, I suddenly was enlightened, and for no apparent reason, my body was covered in sweat. After this, I picked up the Chan compilation, Songs on Enlightenment, and read it. It was as if everything came together. I thought this was supremely strange and marvelous. It seemed that there were no other principles in the world greater than this. While Luo began with a reflection on a key phrase, Zan Hua Tu, slightly different from the practice of silent inner reflection, the mystical experience is the same. After he returned to the study of Cheng and Zhu, he recognized that this enlightenment was merely a product of the wonders of the spiritual sensation, xinxue, and that only Chan holds to this spiritual sensation and calls it the supreme way. He thus proceeded to criticize Lu Jiuyuan and Yang Jian for being blinded by the wonders of light and shadows, Guangjing, while overlooking the subtlety of ethical principles. He criticized Chen Baisha, saying, "Now he hopes to cultivate a beginning from within quietude. How does he hope to understand the beginnings of goodness if he is always meditating and never has any intercourse with affairs and things? After hiding away for a while, he may have some sudden insight, but it is nothing more than the light and shadows of an empty spirit." Shu Ling. That is to say, mystical experience is nothing more than a fantasy or illusion, light and shadows of the mind, empty spirit. It cannot be treated as the Great Way. Luo Qinshun's personal experience with these things makes his criticism powerfully persuasive. But, in fact, those students of Zhu Xi who lack this kind of experience also grasped the point. Hu Juren, Jingzhai, 1434 to 1484, writing before Luo, says, Buddhists think that the refined spirit, Jingling, is nature. If one focuses and holds to this, one can escape the cycle of birth and rebirth. Chen Gongfu says that things are limited, but I am unlimited. This is the same idea. Zhu Xi says that this is just playing around with spirit, Jingshen. I think this truly grasps what it is all about. When Chen first went to practice quiet meditation and block out all thoughts, he remained quiet for a long time. His spirit became bright and shiny, guangcai, and there was not a thing left inside. He took this to be true emptiness. As Hu Juren points out, if Confucians do not try to exhaustively grasp the principle of things, preferring some partial view of the origin, and loosely talking about heaven, earth, and things being one with me, the result is that they are not one with the way. He also understood that this kind of experience is nothing more than playing around with spirit. Lu Jingye's student, Yang Tianyu, said, practice is original form, gongfu ji benti, a proposition that preceded and set the stage for that of Liu Zhongzhou and Huang Zongqi. He criticized his contemporaries for being unable to approach equilibrium and harmony with an honest mind, being unable to show reverent fear, jiezhu, in front of what is unseen and unknown, and hoping to get a glimpse of the image of before stirring from out of the blue, xuankong. They are unable to study Confucius and Yan Hui with an honest mind and hope to find, out of the blue, the locus in which Confucius and Yan Hui found pleasure, Kongyan Lei Chu. This is criticizing learning of the heart for turning the practice of experiencing before stirring and the locus of Confucius and Yan Hui's pleasure into a mystical experience. He specifically noted the following. Sitting silently, xinxue, can slide into Chan meditation, Chan Ding. Holding and preserving, Cao Cun, can be misunderstood as breath control. Emphasizing reverence, Zhu Jing, can be erroneously equated with awakening. Investigating things and exhaustively understanding principles, Gewu Zhong Li, can become confused with perfect enlightenment. Preserving the heart and cultivating nature can get trapped in the idea of revealing nature through the heart, Jixin Jianxing. Ming Dynasty Yang Ming scholarship was invested precisely in these experiential techniques. Chan meditation, breath control, seeing nature by understanding the heart, Mingxin Jianxing, even though the purpose was to become a Confucian sage. Wang Shuihuai, Nantang, 1522 to 1605, studied Chan deeply and deciphered how it might be confused for the truth at a point so close to principle. His Yu Lu records, Latter-day Confucians mistakenly believe that emotional knowledge, xinxue, is the form of the heart, and set to work ordering emotional knowledge. They seek out stability and purity, but are, alas, unable to attain it. If they attain anything, it is simply the ability to hold to a thought or grasp light and shadows. They make much of this, thinking they have attained something, but it is finally not the original shape, bense, of the heart. From this we know that even followers of Yang Ming criticize this kind of playing around with light and shadows. Huang Zongxi's Mingru Shui'an is filled with this kind of criticism. For instance, when talking about followers of Yang Ming in Zhe, he says, at this time many students of the school simply took flowing, Liu Xing, to be the original form. This is playing with light and shadow, Guangying. In his description of Luo Jinxi's 1515 to 1588 scholarship, Huang writes, the student doesn't reflect, thinking erroneously that clarity and depth is the original form of the heart. His heart is deeply confused, and he nostalgically holds to these shadowy lights, Jingguang. These are all criticisms of taking mystical experience to be original form. According to Huang Zongxi, Yang Shiqiao's style, Jizhai, died 1609, scholarship is closest to that of Luo Qinshun. Yang Shiqiao's discussion of mystical experience is particularly clear. Of late, only those of the Chan tradition know nothing of the way. They think that the empty place of the human heart, blood, and qi is goodness. The spiritual place, lingchu, is knowledge. By closing the eyes and gazing within, the blood and qi converge, ningju, and the spiritual place emits light. This is sensation, insight, enlightenment, and the height of knowledge. In the last few decades, many students of the learning of the heart call this Buddhist practice good knowledge or even the vehicle for ascent, shangcheng. Being one with the heart, blood and qi converge and settle. The empty spirit, shu ling, produces wisdom and unbounded penetrating understanding. They see proof of this in Confucius's word ascent, from ascending understanding, shangda, in Analects, and look down on those who instruct students to search for principle outside. To analyze this Buddhist practice further, I would say that empty spirit is called knowing, producing wisdom is called awakening, and unbounded, penetrating understanding is called enlightenment. Put together, we would say knowledge, awakening, enlightenment is the closure of eyes and ears and the gathering together of spirit, jingxue. It might also be called light and shadows within the body. It's the same thing. In his summary of the Buddhist and learning of the heart experience, penetrating understanding of the original truth is an introvertive experience of the original mind. Boundless understanding is the extrovertive experience of unity with the universe. In fact, they are both light and shadows within the body. That is to say, they are merely a natural, physiological, and psychological response. Light and shadows is the mental imagination. Conclusion. The mystical experience of learning of the heart can be traced back to Mencius. Mencius says, "The myriad things are all within me. By reflecting on the self, there is integrity. There is no greater pleasure." How exactly the myriad things can all be within me is not only a constantly debated issue in contemporary scholarship, it was debated in the Song and Ming periods as well. The fact that Cheng and Zhu explained myriad things as the principles of myriad things shows the trouble that Mencius's proposition made for rationalist philosophers. As this essay has described, Mencius's teaching is not only completely comprehensible from the perspective of mysticism, it is also the source of this tradition, and, to a large degree, determined the content and explanation of later Confucian experiences. The descriptions provided by Chen Baisha, Nie Shuangjiang, Hu Ji, Jiang Xin, and others, not to mention the absurd descriptions provided by Lu Jiuyuan and Yang Jian, all refer to this kind of experience. While the phrase reflecting on the self, there is integrity, is not detailed, it seems reasonable to interpret it as gazing within, ne guan. It also seems fair to say Mencius's cultivating one's expansive qi, shanyang haoran ji qi, has similarities to the practice of breath control. There is no greater pleasure also describes the sense of pleasure accompanying all mystical experiences. Understood in the context of the Confucian mystical experiences referred to above, this reading doesn't seem far-fetched. The basic features of the Confucian mystical experience can be summarized as follows. 1. Unity of self and all things. 2. Unity of universe and heart, or the idea that the entire universe and the things within it are in the heart. 3. Disclosure of the heart's form, shenti, namely pure consciousness. 4. The disappearance of all distinctions and transcendence of time and space. 5. Sudden, spontaneous enlightenment. 6. High level of excitement, pleasure, strong sense of surprise, or physiological reactions, body drenched in sweat. These features are basically the same as the features of mystical experiences in various religions, as discussed by scholars of comparative religion. The division of mystical experience into two types, introvertive and extrovertive, did not begin with Stace. Many scholars have used different terms of art to describe a similar divide. For instance, Rudolf Otto divides mysticism into the inward way and the outward way. Evelyn Underhill divides it into introversion and extroversion. In practice, the distinction between these two types of mystical experience is perhaps not as clear or precise as the theoretical divide suggests, but the basic distinction is this. The content of the introvertive mystical experience is the original mind. That of the extrovertive experience is the universe. Confucian mystical experience can also be divided into these two basic types. The unity of self and all things is representative of the extrovertive type. The universe is my heart and the disclosure of the heart's form are two types of introvertive experience. The basic method for realizing a mystical experience in Confucianism is quiet meditation, xinxue, namely, silent gazing within, and returning to profound silence in order to understand emotion. Gui Qi Yi Tong Gan. Disclosure of the heart's form is not unfamiliar to Buddhism and Chan. See the writings of D.T. Suzuki. What is left when someone gets rid of all thought, feeling, desire, and sense of the outside world. Only pure consciousness itself. This is a paradox. Mystical experience is a real experience, but it has no precise content. It is consciousness, but it is consciousness without content. Westerners refer to this as pure consciousness or pure ego. Ancient Chinese called it the form of the heart, the true form of this heart, or the original form of the heart. Pure refers to the fact that it has no experiential content. This is different from the pure, undefined unity resulting from the dialectic in Hegel's philosophy. The idea, universe is my heart is the universe, is one step further down the line than the disclosure of the heart's form. In the experience of Hinduism, people not only experience pure consciousness, they also sense a transcendence of the boundary between subject and object. The pure ego is united with Brahma. In other words, the individual small self is united with the penultimate reality of the universe, the universal or cosmic self. Stace argued that the pure absence of distinctions is the essence of the introvertive experience, suggesting that emptiness, nothingness, wu, and pure consciousness are all different ways of saying one, or oneness. This emphasizes similarities without seeing the differences. In fact, the same practice of silent meditation might produce different experiences. This is largely determined by the subconscious of the subject, or the purpose given by the practitioner to the experience. Using the same or similar practices of cultivation, the Christian experience is perhaps unity with God, while the Neo-Confucian learning of principle, xinxue, experience is unity with things. The Buddhist experience is emptiness, while Neo-Confucian learning of the heart experiences the original heart. The horizon of each is different. While Confucianism absorbed the mystical tradition from Buddhism and Taoism, it would be fundamentally wrong to say that Lu Jiuyuan or Wang Yangming's teachings are Chan. The initial impulse for and final result of learning of the heart, mystical experience, is not the search for the highest existence of the soul or emptiness. It is the attainment of a spiritual world. Jingshen, Jingjie. Many years ago, Feng Yulan argued that Cheng Hao was the founder of Song and Ming learning of the heart. However, he was basically interested in whether a divide was made between the above form, xing and the within form, xia. Whether this divide can be made deserves more research. From the evidence offered in this essay, it is clear that Cheng Hao's thought and cultivation practices are related to the later development of learning of the heart. It is clear that the development of Song and Ming learning of the heart, with its focus on the work of Mencius, absorbed the mystical tradition. For this school of thought, mystical experience is not only the method or practice for advancement to sagehood, it also provides a psychological ground for their philosophy. However, psychological experience is largely random and cannot be transmitted through universal guidelines. It must be experienced by the individual alone, and then only after a long period of cultivation and practice. Unlike the spontaneous practice of He Xiangzhuang's Qigong, it is not something that can be grasped by the average person by following simple guidelines for practice. On the other hand, this experience cannot be maintained for long. Some last for a very short duration, and once lost it is difficult to regain. See, for example, Hu Qi's experience. For this reason, the lack of universal efficacy and dependability calls into question the usefulness of inner experience as a means for the cultivation of virtue, even if it might be consistently effective for some people. This kind of mystical experience is also primarily a subjective psychological phenomenon and does not show the practitioner that he has grasped true objective reality. Many chaste women in the Middle Ages, when longing for Jesus, had the experience of being embraced, but the experience is not real. Modern psychologists can use hypnotism and medication to produce mystical experiences. Living in the modern era of scientific development, we must use reason to survey the mystical experiences of Confucianism. Without doubt, in the line from Mencius to Lu and Wang, the emphasis on ethical subjectivity and awareness of the innately good heart, liang xin zi chui, made huge contributions to Confucianism. However, their metaphysical propositions, myriad things are all within me, humaneness is the unity of heaven, earth, and things, the universe is my heart is the universe, there is nothing outside the heart, etc., are all associated with mystical experience. We might inquire of the learning of the heart approach, is it necessary to ground the application of the innately good heart, the unity of knowing and action, the expansion of the four beginnings, and the completion of the heart, Jin Shin, in the propositions, the myriad things are all within me, and my heart is the universe? Does one need to have the experience of disclosing the heart's form or penetrating clarity? In other words, without these experiences, is it possible to establish Confucian ethical subjectivity and Confucian metaphysics? For the rationalists in the Confucian tradition, the answer is in the affirmative. If we hope to re-establish Chinese philosophy, this is a direction. However, in recent learning of the heart, Zhu Xi has his own entirely new ontology without reference to any mystical experience. In terms of the history of philosophy, the experiential teachings of Mengzi, Lu Jiuyuan, and Wang Yangming have provided a unique form of thought different from Western philosophy. It is neither a kind of subjective idealism nor a type of egoism. Mu Zongsan defined Lao Tzu's thought as world metaphysics, xinxue, xinxue. Similarly, we might call learning of the heart experiential metaphysics. Experience or enlightenment are modes of human intellectual activity, mystical experience being an extreme type of human experience. My teacher, Zhang Dainyan, pointed out many years ago that the emphasis on the experience of enlightenment is one of the unique features of Chinese philosophy. Mystical experience demonstrates the penultimate form of this feature. As a model, this is the same as Chinese aesthetics. The writings and expressions of earlier thinkers were often the result of personal experience. Hence, later scholars could not simply look at their writings, but needed to use their own practice to reproduce the inner experience of the author. In doing so, one hoped to achieve a kind of spiritual state, jingshen, jingjie. They weren't looking to reflect the objective world, but rather wanted to express their own subjective world. This is a feature of Chinese culture and Chinese philosophy that cannot be discussed at greater length here. Of course, Chinese aesthetics is not all expression, just as Chinese philosophy is not all experience. Rather, the full development of this kind of experience is simply one feature of the culture. The question of mystical experience involves many other questions as well. For instance, the relationship between intuition and enlightenment, or its relationship to anti-intellectualism in intellectual history. Each of these could be researched further. However, the main task of this essay has been completed, so I will stop here.